Hey everybody, this is Pick One, Pack One, everything you need to start your draft off right. I'm your host, Gavin McKay, and I'm here with my co-host, Paul J. Cabo. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good, Gavin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for this new set, Aetherdrift. I know that all of the set has now been released. We can see all the cards, and I have to say, I'm very impressed. I'm very excited for the set so far.
We are going to put the pedal to the metal today talking about this set. I can't wait to get to max speed and really get into it.
Yeah, I think we're going to exhaust all the puns before the night is over, for sure.
100%. This is Aetherdrifting, folks. Get used to it. They're going to be
Strap
puns.
in, buckle up.
Strap in. We're doing this. Before we dive into that, though, we've got a cool segment that we like to call the Cool Deck of the Week.
That's right. Yeah. So this one's actually another pretty fun one. I actually, for the first time in my life, was able to achieve Mythic rank in Limited. So that means I got to the highest rank that I achieved was 793 ranked.
Very nice.
Towards the end of this season, January. Obviously, there wasn't foundations up, and they were doing flashback drafts to Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which is one of my favorite sets from the past year. So we're actually going to show my deck that I used to get to Mythic for the first time, and it was a pretty sweet one. So this deck was a Selesnya deck for mounts, and let me show it here. Okay, so here is the deck that I used to get to Mythic. It is a Selesnya mounts deck, I guess you could call, which is great because this is also what's going to be happening a lot in Aetherdrift, most likely, because there is this card called Trained Erranks, which was my MVP. I would take a million of these cards in my deck if I could. Basically, comes down and it's a statistically relevant body, so it's a 3/1. But it gets first strike if it's saddled, and it also lets you scry one. Both options are relevant, and the card wouldn't be as good if it didn't have both of those abilities, but it's still extremely good. It attacks extremely profitably. If you have any way to pump it, which there are these mercenary tokens in OTJ that allow you to pump your creatures by 1 power, which makes it a 4/1 first strike, which is even better. So this oftentimes will just trade up. Then the Voracious Varmint is so good in the matchup that is like the mirror matchup, because all white's removal is pretty much artifact removal. And then I had 3 of these Throw from the Saddles, which was a fantastic combat trick. Excuse me, not combat trick because it's sorcery, but basically it's a 2-mana version of the card that we talked about in Foundations. Oh, what was that card again? Clear Shot?
Felling Blow?
Felling Blow, that's right.
Yeah.
The 3-mana sorcery that put a 1/1 counter on your creature and had it deal power to another creature. This is a better version of that in this type of deck because you have a lot of mounts. I also had 2 Dance of the Tumbleweeds for fixing and also ramp. And also, in a late game situation, 5 mana or 6 mana would get you a very large creature. And then some Hard Bristle Bandits for, advanced mana acceleration, a couple of Holy Cows for additional scrying, life gain, and dealing with flyers, and an Aven Interrupter, which was one of my MVPs, just interrupting your opponent's turn and putting them off their curve. And then for removal, I had 2 Buried in the Gardens. I had a Stagewood Security for finishing the game. And I was splashing Bruce Tarl, the Roving Ranger. He was especially good because you could immediately conjure a 2/2 Ox if your opponent didn't, well, even if you dealt with him right away, he'd still get an Ox if you exiled a land. But he also gives all of my Oxes double strike. And notably, Holy Cow happens to be an Ox. He sure is. So that was a very low curve deck. As you can see, most of my plays were 2-drops. And then, just some things that can kind of punch me through a bigger defense. The Buried in the Garden was very good. Got me. I actually faced in one of my last matches. I faced off against Gisa, which is the most terrifying card pretty much in the entire set because it makes zombies whenever you commit crimes. And she also has Ward pay 2 life, I think, and Ward 2. So in addition to being very hard to kill, she also immediately impacts the board as soon as you commit a crime. But luckily, I went Buried Garden into them killing my Buried Garden with a Voracious Varmint, and then buried her in the garden again. So, Gisa, you may be a zombie master, but I was able to bury you 6 feet under in that matchup. So that
Very
felt pretty
nice.
good. Yeah, that felt pretty good. And obviously, achieving that rank is a nice milestone.
Congrats for
Hopefully
sure.
we can do it some more in this upcoming Aetherdrift set.
Well, Gavin, I definitely want to return to this deck, and as you're our resident Outlaws expert, because I was not the biggest fan of this format, so I'll be deferring to you. Because there are mounts in this set and mount synergies are also popping up in Aetherdrift, this is something we're going to come back and talk about and revisit, figuring
Absolutely.
out what is a good mounts deck.
Sure.
Well, before we get into talking about the signpost, because I do want to cover that, I want to talk about how we approach looking at a new set and a new format for the first time. The big question is, where do you start analyzing a new format? And for me, that starts with two things: looking at all the mechanics in the set and how it breaks down, but then taking that and looking at individual cards and finding comparisons between cards in the new format with cards that you already know. So to start out with Aetherdrift, the first thing that we have to look at are the mechanics are start your engines, vehicles and mounts, the exhaust ability, and cycling. That's that nice evergreen mechanic there that pops up now and again. Extra punny.
I do like cycling
this time around.
Not unicycling, but cycling.
Sadly, not unicycling. They did make a unicycle variant. So everyone knows unicycle is a playtest card from one of the mystery booster sets. It's an equipment vehicle. It was one of my favorite of the playtest cards. I'm really sad that they did do an equipment vehicle in this set, but it is nowhere near as playable as unicycle was, sadly.
Well, someday you'll get your unicycle, Paul.
Someday we will get that unicycle or Big Mechs fighting.
Gavin Verhey, I'll have him sign it and send it over to you.
Oh, I would love that for sure. So with Aetherdrift, we have 40 cards with start your engines. So that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot of cards with that particular mechanic on it. Does it remind you of any other type of mechanic as far as how it actually plays in a game?
We talked about offline, how it reminds us a lot of the Lord of the Rings, the ring tempts you mechanic. Kind of something that you're doing another mechanic and getting better and making attacks more relevant.
Right. It's another mechanic that relevantly counts to 4. I don't know if it'll be as difficult to get to, number 4 as it is in Lord of the Rings. It does seem like a lot of creatures are positioned to either damage your opponent incidentally or on purpose through attacking. So it does seem like it might be a little bit easier to achieve rank 4 because the goal of you going into this game is to get your opponent's life total to 0. So you are going to want to get max speed already, right? If you are
max speed is the goal, and it's that kind of max speed ability. So start your engines. Let's back up a second. Start your engines is an ability that says start your engines, ! If you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life, and max speed is 4. And then cards have a max speed ability that you can either trigger or activate once you've reached max speed. We'll talk about 1 or 2 of them. This gives me very strong Ring vibes, but it also gives me very strong Outlaws of Thunder Junction committing crimes vibes. It's, you're already doing a thing that you want to do, and this is making all of the cards you have better.
That's right. Yeah. So it's sort of a passive effect, like something like Threshold, where once you get to Threshold, you have Threshold. Once you get to start your engines, once you get to max speed 4, you're going to have that for all game, except in one very, very niche situation. There's one card that will remove speed, max speed, but we can talk about that a little bit later. You're basically going to have this. Once you have it, you can't lose it, and it's very hard for you to not have those effects. Every single card will have that relevant effect going forward.
Right. Exactly.
It makes your late game better.
It makes your late game better, but it also makes your early game more impactful. This is going to be a set from my perspective, it's going to be very important to come down early and curve out. So being aggressive is good, but it's also going to be a set, at least from my cursory analysis, where train of thought. I'm starting the engine. Sorry. We're starting the engine. This is where you want to have a deck that has a plan, so that as the game goes, you're not just relying on your curve and, well, my curve didn't get them because they also played Magic. Now what do we do? You want to have a consistent game plan from turn 1 to turn 10, whether that's getting to max speed and then playing a bunch of insane max speed abilities, or that's getting to exhaust, which is a mechanic that we'll get to, and doing that. Having that consistent game plan is going to be good. My theory is that week 1, do start your engines things. That's what I want to do personally.
Definitely. I think that another thing to call out is, along with the 40 start your engine cards, there are also 41 vehicles and 13 mounts in this set. So this is an extremely heavy vehicles and mounts set. Mounts are interesting because they can crew vehicles, and they can also be crewed themselves. They're kind of the double package that you're looking for. So I think that those cards, especially from a Thunder Junction perspective, they always were relevant because they could either be crewed and get an additional ability, or they were just good on the field. They never had to go back, and be an artifact for a turn. They could always just be relevant on the battlefield. So that's my take on mounts versus vehicles. I'm sure there are some vehicles out there that either become, creatures through different effects, and there's some other things, but I really think that the mounts may be more impactful in this set than the vehicles themselves, just as a whole. I don't mean any specific or individual card, but in my experience, even with the unlicensed hearse, which was in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I was always much happier to take a mount card than the unlicensed hearse, even though the unlicensed hearse did give you crime effect, and it was a pretty powerful card. Graveyard Synergy was relevant in some of these decks in Outlaws Thunder Junction. Unlicensed Hearse is a card that can eat cards out of graveyards. So that's why it was relevant, and its power and toughness were equal to the number of cards that it ate out of those graveyards. But I was always happier to take trained Airrinks over the unlicensed Hearse.
Okay. I kind of think Leonin Surveyor is going to be the trained Larynx of this format, because it's a start your engines card, and during your turn it has first strike, and it has a max speed effect, like this cycle that you see here, where when it's in the bin, if you have max speed, you can draw a card. I'm a big fan of this whole cycle. I don't think of these as one piece of cardboard. I think of all of these as 2 pieces of cardboard. They are going to be relevant later in the game. You are going to exile this out of the graveyard and draw a card.
I think that they're all extremely flavorful as well, just as a mechanics thing. These are all the things that your signpost cards are going to do. For example, white is going to have first strike on your turn because it's aggressive color. The blue one is going to have flying. The black one is going to be able to give it +1/+1 at the cost of mana. The goblin one has trample. And the Loxodon, is just a more powerful body.
It just has the best stats of all of them.
It does. I think that the goblin one and the Leonin Surveyor seem the best, but they all kind of cancel each other out in some way. Maybe the Ghost Glitch Surveyor will be the best one because it's evasive.
Yeah, it is the most evasive, so that could end up being the best.
We'll see. I mean, we don't know yet, but this is that cycle that will kind of define a set for how well it actually portrays each one of these color archetypes. So there are a couple other mechanics that you wanted to talk about, right, Paul?
Yeah, so I already brought it up. I want to talk about exhaust. There's 29 cards that have or mention exhaust on them, and that's going to be relevant. There's an archetype in particular that cares about exhaust that we'll get to when we're talking about archetypes. And do you have an exhaust card
relevant? Let's see here. Yes, one of these. Yes, exhaust. Boom Scholar. This is a good example. So Boom Scholar is a 3 mana, 3/3. It's 1 red and a green. It is a creature goblin advisor. It says exhaust abilities of other permanents you control cost 2 less to activate. And then it itself has an exhaust ability for 6 mana. It's 4 red and a green. It says creatures and vehicles you control gain trample until end of turn. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature. Now, one relevant thing about exhaust is you can only activate it once, but you can activate it at instant speed, unless otherwise denoted.
Being able to activate it at instant speed is going to be huge. The fact that you activate it once, I think, is less of a drawback than people are going to think it is. Because, especially for something like Boom Scholar, you're activating it once because this is the turn you're making everything big and you're getting them dead, you know?
Yeah,
this is your overrun effect right
well,
here.
I mean,
it
doesn't give any toughness or power to your board, but it does give a trample.
It does give your whole team trample.
Yeah. If you're gonna be in this green red archetype, this Gruul archetype, then most likely you're going to have some big beaters in there. I know for a fact that there are a few dinosaurs in green that I'm very eager to play because they are huge for the mana cost. I'm very excited to play the dinosaur sub archetype of this set. So, so that's the exhaust mechanic. Did you want to talk about cycling as well?
Cycling is an evergreen mechanic that people have seen before, but for those who haven't, typically cards that have cycling, say cycling mana cost, and that means you pay the mana cost or whatever the cost of the cycling is, you discard the card in question and you draw a card to replace it.
I'm trying to think if we had one available to us here. Well, there is one cycling land, right? This Night Market. Yeah,
Night Market is a good example. That one is cycling 3.
So basically, between 1 and 3 mana typically, right? I don't think there's any cycling 4s, right?
No, but there is a cycling that has an X in its cost. That's a mythic that's pretty insane.
Yeah, we're usually using the average case scenario here. So usually it's cycling 2 or cycling 3. It's basically a cantrip. You discard the card and you draw a card. There is a discard sub-theme in a couple of these archetypes, so it is a discard. So you can use that in a pinch. There are probably some better discard outlets or some discard effects that would be better than cycling. But at the very least, it takes a card that you weren't going to play or isn't that relevant and turns it into one that might be more relevant.
You're going to take this card and turn it into that card.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, you got to make sure that you've got as many discards into deck cards as you can get in the deck. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of these archetypes because I'm excited for all of these. Is there anyone in particular that you wanted to talk about first or start with?
I kind of want to run down in sort of a color order, and we'll just kind of start with Azorius and go down the list from there. I think
Azorius being blue-white.
Azorius being blue-white. I think it's important for us when we talk about the color pairs is not just looking at what the signposts are doing, the 2-color uncommon signposts, is looking at monocolored cards for some of these archetypes as well. So when we look at Azorius, for example, it's a vehicles and artifacts matter archetype. The 2 that we have to look at are, let me back up a second, because this set, while it is not a faction set, it has a loose flavor of having 10 racing teams that are in this Aetherdrifting race across the plains. And so every team has their team vehicle represented. The blue-white team is the guide bots, I believe they are called.
Beep boop, beep boop.
Yeah, the guide lights,
The guide lights, yep.
And so they
not
have...
Not guide heavy, guide light.
Yes, guide light. So they have this sweet vehicle here, the Guide Light Pathmaker. This is an artifact vehicle. It's 4 white blue. It has vigilance. When this vehicle enters, you may search your library for an artifact card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield. If its mana value is 2 or less. Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And crew 2. And it's a 6/5. So those are nice
Which is
stats.
great. Yeah, it's great stats.
Being
And
able to pull something out to crew it is
yeah,
also fantastic.
it is. It's very relevant in the fact that it can just, again, tutor for your artifact and put it on the battlefield right away. That's incredible. For 6 mana, it better do something pretty impressive, and that stat line is nothing to sniff at. The fact that it has vigilance means it's also good on defense, but you do have to crew it, so you need to have at least 2 creatures or something that can crew this on your turn, so that you can take advantage of that vigilance.
Right. And the other signpost for this archetype is Voyage Home, which is
Yeah,
a
I'll take this one.
sorcery.
I love this card. I mean, so when I first started playing Magic, I had a binder full of the Synod, and I didn't know how good they were when I first started playing, because I just had collected them over time, and I didn't know that artifact lands were a thing. I didn't know about the typing because I was young and I didn't know how powerful that could be. So anything that says affinity on it, I know in Outlaws of Thunder Junction they had a card that was affinity for Outlaws, but I think this is going to be a little bit more impactful. Voyage Home. It's a sorcery. It's 7 mana, 5 and 2, a white and a blue pip. It has affinity for artifacts, so it's reduced. The casting cost of it is reduced by 1 for each artifact you control, and the ability is you draw 3 cards and you gain 3 life. The flavor text says, observation: at current rate of travel, eventual rediscovery of home is a mathematical inevitability. Firm imperative. Let's go. So basically, this card is a draw 3 in an affinity deck where you have 5 artifacts on the battlefield. How easy or hard do you think that will be in blue-white, Paul?
I think it's going to be easy. Like, I would be
I
surprised
also
if
think
you're
it's gonna be easy.
paying 3 mana or 4 mana for this. I think it's going to be really
It's a good
easy
effect
to
if
pay
you do
too.
pay. Like if you pay 3 mana for this, I'd take that all day, every day.
Right. It's still
Draw 3 cards.
it's still a great rate. I'd
That's a
even
fantastic
be
rate.
fine paying 4 for it,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the possibility of you paying just 2 mana for it is so tempting.
The
This
fact
card's
that it gains you life instead of making you pay life to draw cards as well is a very white. It's a white ability to draw cards and gain life, as opposed to black where you draw cards and lose life. But it's one of those things where having this tacked on, let's say you actually don't have any artifacts, let's say your board got wiped or something like that, and you do have to pay the 7. The fact that it gains you 3 life can be relevant. It absolutely can be relevant. So I wouldn't discount that part of the card either.
No, this is going to reload you. It's going to buff your life. It's kind of everything your blue-white mage wants to do in one card.
Sure, absolutely. And, refuels your hand, for car puns. It refuels your hand and makes you a little bit ready to go. It's basically like a pit stop. This is
Absolutely.
pit stop in a car,
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the next archetype, which is Demir, which is blue-black. You want to talk about this Haunted Hell Ride?
Yeah.
It's a scary looking card.
That is one heck of a card right there. That's a speed demon if I've ever seen it.
Card.
It's a hell of a card. Yeah. It is an artifact vehicle. It is 1 blue and a black. And it says, whenever you attack, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains death touch until end of turn. Untap it. It crews for only 1, which is pretty sweet. And it's a 3/3. So it's a 3 mana 3/3 essentially. I like this card, but I don't think it's as strong of a signpost as the other uncommon card in here that we're going to talk about.
I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit on this, because it says whenever you attack and not whenever it attacks.
Okay.
So it will automatically, even if you have like a 1/1 on your board, it's going to make it a relevant attacker, especially if you're trying to get to max speed, like we were saying. They're not going to want to block a 2/1 death touch.
No.
They're just not going to want to do that. And the fact that it also can be crewed, it also untaps that permanent.
Yes, it does.
If you wanted to get a little cute, you could, use the mana from your mana dork, and then, well, I guess you can't really untap it if you're using it for mana, but I digress. I think it's a really cool card. I like it a lot. I think it'll get in some extra damage that maybe wouldn't have gotten in otherwise. I don't think it's as powerful as like say Most Valuable Slayer, which gave +1/+0 in first strike. I think that's a little more relevant than Death Touch, but I do think that this is a strong ability.
I'm biased towards Haunt the Network, though. This screams win condition.
Screams, literally screams.
It literally screams.
Yeah,
so
that's horrifying.
This is a sorcery, 3 blue and a black, that says choose target opponent, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Then the chosen player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This is spicy.
So this actually pairs very well with the Affinity for Artifacts card that we talked about earlier in the blue-white deck, right? So it seems like there are a lot of payoffs for having a lot of artifacts.
Absolutely. Both blue-white and blue-black are going to care about artifacts considerably. And I really feel like, we'll talk about the mana fixing in this set, but I really feel like Esper Artifacts is one of the things I want to do. I just want to draw a bunch of cards for cheap. I want to slam this down and dome people for however much. Just get them dead. And if it doesn't work, just having...
At baseline, it's +2, -2, right?
Yes.
That's baseline.
Baseline +2, -2.
I don't think it's going to be very hard for this to be 3, 4, 5, or 6 in some cases. So even if you think you're at a pretty safe life total, this can kind of come out of nowhere and finish you off, especially if they did an all-out attack or something. I feel like this can finish you off pretty... I'm a little bit trepidatious about cards like this because it seems like the ceiling on it is so high, and maybe sometimes it doesn't play out as often as you'd like it to be in the best case scenario. Like, are you ever going to do 20 damage with this? No, you're never going to do that.
Probably not.
You're probably already winning. You're probably already winning if you have that many artifacts on the board. But
I do agree that there is a problem with the floor on this card not necessarily being very good. 2 Thopters and 2 life is not the most exciting thing, worst case scenario. So it's not going to help you on the back foot as much. But if you're at parity or better,
it could swing it right in your direction.
Good night to your opponent.
That's great. Well, okay, so that is the Dimir, the blue-black. Let's talk about Rakdos. Now, I'm a big Rakdos fan from Foundations. That was my favorite archetype. Let's see what this one has in store for us. This one's called Apocalypse Runner. It's a 4 mana, black and a red, target artifact vehicle, and it has tap. Target creature you control with power 2 or less gains lifelink until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. It's also crew 3. Don't avoid the wreck, survive it. Far fortune.
Yeah. It's a 6/5, so that's nothing to sneeze at.
I forgot to mention that. Yes, it's also a 6/5 for 4 mana.
I think the most relevant thing, though, is that target creature you control with power 2 or less gains lifelink and can't be blocked this turn.
Yeah. That we saw that in Duskmourn. There was an artifact that could make creatures power 2 or less. I think it was called the not Twitching Doll. It was the red 2 mana doll that could give something unblockable. I'm blanking on the name of it. But this is similar.
Shout
to
out
that,
to us in the comments. Tell us what the name of that was.
What was the name of that doll? It was a doll, red doll. So this is a better version of that, obviously, because it also comes with a 6/5 body. The other one was a 2/2.
A 2/2, yeah, for 2.
Yeah. So this one, again, what you could do with the other one is you could, make your 2/2 or whatever unblockable, then pump it, with combat tricks, because the ability will already have resolved and it will be unblockable. And then you can pump up its power as much as you'd like. I'm not sure how many combat tricks will be able to provide that level of power in this set. I know there were quite a few that, pumped its power, whenever another creature with power 2 or less entered, or some other things. So it did seem like it worked a lot in Duskborn. I don't know if it'll work as well here, but I do think it is a strong effect, and that body is nothing to sneeze at. The only kind of Nambo thing, I would say, the things that don't really work really well together, is that it can give a creature you control with power 2 or less lifelink, but it's fruit 3. So, it's going to care about something that has 2 or less power but it can't be crewed by less than a 3-power creature or two, a 2 and a 1 or a 3 1s or something like that. So it may be a little bit trickier to crew this on the same turn that you play it than maybe some of the other vehicles.
Well, Gavin, there are pilots in this deck, and they do
That's
crew
true.
at 2 higher than their power. So
They do. Yeah.
this could
So
have
this would be a good way
pilot.
to pilot.
I think the relevant thing is being unblockable. I think this is going to get you to max speed very easily, so that all your max speed nonsense can then happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're trying to get in for max speed, making something unblockable or giving something evasion is the way to do it. It's going to be hard to make profitable attacks if the ground is all gummed up.
Yeah. Rakdos is going to be all about leaving your opponents in the dust.
For sure. Let's talk about Gastel Thrillseeker, because this one is also pretty interesting. It has Start Your Engines, and it's a 2-mana creature, a 2/3, a black and a red pip. So it has Start Your Engines, and when it enters, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you gain 1 life. And then at max speed, it has Death Touch and Haste. So it's good on the turn that you play it because it starts your engines, and then it also gets you to speed 2 right away. Am I understanding that correctly? Because you start your engines at 1, and then when your opponent is dealt damage on your turn, it increases your speed. Is that correct?
If they have it increases once on each turn, so it's not gonna. It shouldn't double. So it's only gonna trigger once, but it.
But if you're already on one, if you've played something else, there are a few 1-mana creatures in red, as well as a couple of lands that can start your engines as well, which we could talk about later. But
this is always going to trigger.
This will get you up 1 level every time. And then the max speed, if you're already at max speed, Death Touch and Haste, it's always good. It can get you in for some damage. It's hard to block. It makes it annoying. I like this card a lot.
Yeah, this is sweet.
All right. We already talked a little bit about Boomscaller. Did you want to go over it one more time?
I just think it's important to note that Gruul is one of the archetypes that cares about exhaust quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I really think doing Teamer Exhaust is going to be a thing that is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things about exhaust, and we're not talking about it here, but the signpost, I think, Teamer Uncommon is Loot. And Loot has 3 exhaust abilities, and they're all...
isn't Loot a rare?
He is a rare. Excuse me, he is a rare. But he has 3 different exhaust abilities. One of them gives you mana. One of them gives you deals 3 damage to, I believe, a player, or it might be any target actually. And then the other one.
Let's pull it up. But I do want to mention that when we start talking about monocolored cards, Elvish Refueler is nothing to sneeze at.
Loot the Pathfinder, that's who it is. Okay, so Loot the Pathfinder is green, blue, and red.
And 2.
So 5 mana. But it has Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste. So you can activate these abilities on the same turn that you play him. So Exhaust 1 is add 3 mana of any one color, so a Black Lotus effect.
Yeah.
A blue pip, draw 3 cards. That's Ancestral Recall. And then Exhaust, deal 3 damage to any target. Lightning Bolt. Right?
Take it, yeah.
I mean, if you hook this up with the other uncommon that gives exhaust abilities the ability to be activated again, you're going to have some major league amazing games.
Yeah, that's the Elvish Refueler.
Yes, okay, exactly.
So I want to talk about that because Elvish Refueler is one of my favorite cards in the set. Yeah, this is 2 and a green for a creature Elf Druid. It's a 2/3 body, so that's also already okay. Yeah. And it says, during your turn, as long as you haven't activated an exhaust ability this turn, you may activate exhaust abilities as though they have not been activated. And it has an exhaust ability on its own of 1 and a green, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it'll grow itself every turn, but if you have other cool exhaust abilities and you want to keep using them, this is the sweet linchpin of your exhaust deck.
Yeah.
So
another cool thing is, again, you can exhaust at instant speed. And so this only cares about it on your turn. But if you activate Loot's ability for 3 mana or Lightning Bolt or Ancestral Recall, on your opponent's turn, and then come back to your turn at the end of their turn, you can activate it again. Draw 6 cards in for 2 mana. That seems very busted. Again, this is all best case scenario, but I don't think it's going to be especially hard to either get both of these cards, together. It's an uncommon and a rare. You might need to do a little bit of work to get both of them, but I really think that Loot is extremely powerful, and
For sure.
For
And I
once.
think this card is more powerful than
For once.
people think it's going to be. I'm very, very high on this card. We talked earlier about having a game plan for every stage of the game. And this is a card that's giving you a plan for the game. It's saying,
Worst
I'm
case
going to
scenario,
play
you can
stuff
just
early.
You could just keep putting 1/1 counters on it.
Yeah,
That's
even
a
by
worst case
itself, if you're
scenario.
not doing anything else, just keep growing this thing,
Anyone running low? All right, cool. Let's get back to the Gruul, because the exhaust mechanic, it definitely makes me feel. I feel like that might be one of my favorite parts of this set.
It's going to be hard for us to exhaust talking about it.
All right, let's talk about the Rocketeer Boost Buggy next.
Yeah.
Great name, by the way.
Absolutely. This is an artifact vehicle. It's 2 mana. It's red and a green. Whenever this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token. It's a 3/2 body with those stats. And it also has an exhaust ability of 3 of any color. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And it has crew 1.
Yeah, crew 1 is great. I mean, honestly, anything can crew this. It may not be relevant the turn that it comes down because it doesn't have haste, so you're not making that treasure right away. But the treasure basically pays for its exhaust ability to make it a creature later on. So it's definitely going to be relevant, and I'm pretty sure that the treasure is going to be relevant too, especially on turn 4, when you're maybe getting to the later stage of the game where you want to ramp out a big 6 mana spell or something like that. I think that that's going to be extremely relevant. There's another card in red that also gives you treasure when it's saddled and it attacks, but it's not a vehicle, so it also has a relevant body. I don't know if that's going to make a huge difference. This is also harder to cast, because it's 2 colored mana instead of red and a colorless like the other one is. So we'll see which one comes out on top, but I have a feeling that the red common is going to outperform this Rocketeer Boost Buggy, but I'm more than happy to be proven wrong.
I just really like the play of Rocketeer Boost Buggy into Elvish Refueler into Profit.
Rocketeer Boost Buggy again.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, no, that would be really fun. Okay, so let's talk now about Selesnya. So the last time we had a vehicle / mounts / other, types of artifact creatures and things. We had Outlaws of Thunder Junction. And if we wanted to go back to artifacts and artifact creatures, we would go back to like Kamigawa and Neon Dynasty, and even as far back as why am I blanking on the name of the plane?
You can look at Kaladesh block.
Kaladesh now is,
Avishkar is the name of the
Avishkar.
setting. Yeah. As far as a set goes, I don't have distinct memories of green-white being fantastic, but I think that's because I was so biased in that block. I drafted so much red after the second set came out when it was no longer just Kaladesh and you were drafting Aether Revolt. There was a 2 mana 2/1 with first strike that also made energy to give you 1/1s.
Gotcha.
The fact that it had first strike and there were so many good combat tricks in that format, I just won so many games off the back of that 2/1 first striker. I always have a soft spot in every format for a 2 mana first striker especially on attacks.
That's great. So this one, the Selesnya Lagarin, Soul of Alakria, it's a 2 mana green and a white, a legendary creature beast mount. It's a 1/1 with flying, and when it attacks while saddled, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target mounts or vehicles. So this can put it on itself. This kind of reminds me of the Ornery Tumblewag from Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
Okay.
That one didn't have to be saddled to put a 1/1 counter on something, but this is kind of like if Ornery Tumblewag and Felidar Savior had a baby, because this is pretty easy to saddle. It's going to be relevant, and it's basically going to boost up the creature that saddled it, and it's also going to boost up itself. So if you play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you saddle it with, like, say, a 2-mana 2/2, you're going to have a 3/3 and a 2/2 flyer on turn 3, and that's overstated. That's going to be, better than most. So I really like this card a lot. I think it's going to be extremely easy to saddle. I think it's going to be extremely easy to get those effects. And your opponent's going to have to deal with it right away before it gets out of hand, because it can get out of hand pretty quickly.
It's going to get quite beastly.
Would you say it's a
It is a
beater?
beast mount. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It is a beater of a beast mount.
I really like this card a lot. I mean, like I said, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, it's speaking to me in this card, especially with the art of it being sandy, and it reminds me so much of that, and I really like it a lot. So let's talk about the other Selesnya card, the green-white card. This one's called Veteran Beast Rider. It's 3 mana, 1 green and 1 white, creature human knight. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control, and then it has a mana ability of 2, a green and a white, and that says creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Your enemies will underestimate you, but you must never underestimate yourself. That is some amazing art, Paul. Do you agree?
I like the wolf that they're riding. That sword is cool with the lightning coming off of it. I'm very happy to have a 3 mana 3/4 body.
Yes.
The fact that you get to untap on your end step, untapping each creature you control, is fantastic. So everything that you use to crew or mount and attack with is now all of a sudden coming back and playing defense. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. I just think that this card works so well in I mean, not necessarily in limited formats, but in a Convoke deck, this would be absolutely bonkers. I really think that this is just the best thing about it is the stat line: 3 mana for a 3/4, and then the perks of untapping your creatures and the perks of being able to give everything +1/+1 till end of turn for 1 additional mana. I mean, I could definitely see a scenario where, again, you pair these two together. You pair the Beast Rider and this one, the one that we just talked about. You pair these together, and you're attacking with on turn 4, you're attacking with a 3/3 flyer and a 4/5 Beast Rider, and they all untap at the end step. Like, that seems ridiculously good, and if you can pull it off, it just seems like you would win a lot of those games. I mean, who needs max speed when you can outrace your opponents anyway?
Right. Don't even bother with max speed.
Don't
Just
even
keep
bother
putting
with max speed.
+1/+1 counters on. You're going to get to max speed naturally anyways.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about Orzhov. You want to take this one?
Yeah. The vehicle that we care about in Orzhov is the Dune Drifter. This is X, white, black, artifact vehicle. When this vehicle enters, return target artifact or creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It has a 3/3 stat line, and it's cruise for 2. I really love this card. I think it's going to be sweet when you play it on 2, just to have your I'm playing aggressive and I need to be aggressive. But when you're looking to do something sweet in the late game, getting back pretty much anything that you want to get back out of your graveyard in the late game, or just getting something cheap back to crew this, I think it's just gravy on top of gravy. I really like this card.
I am less high on this card simply because having 2 additional pips to pay, a white and a black, to reanimate something is a little bit of an ask. If you're doing this for 5 and you're getting back a 3 mana artifact or creature, that's going to feel okay. But I think if you're in the early game, you probably don't want to play this for. I would say you wouldn't want to play this for anything less than 5. And even in a best case scenario, where you're getting back your most powerful creature or vehicle or artifact, you're spending quite a bit of mana to get it back, and it may not necessarily impact the board right away. That being said, your opponent probably used a removal spell to kill it, and now that's a wasted removal spell, but you are still having to sink quite a bit of mana into this in order to make it work. It almost feels like the card from Duskmourn, Rite of the Moth, and that was 4 mana, and that still felt, it was a lot more colors. It was a white and 2
And
black, I
double
believe.
black, yeah.
Yeah. So the color restrictions were worse on that. But this one also has small color restriction. I guess by turn 5, when you would have 5 mana, you're most likely to have white and black mana available to you. But again, I think that just as a card itself, I also don't love the stat line. I wish it was a 4/4 because again, you're probably going to be playing this. I would like to be playing this maybe on turn 5 or turn 6. But tell me what you think about that, Paul.
I think a 4/4 is too. I think a 4/4 is too pushed for the base cost of just casting it as a 2-drop. Like I think that's the problem.
That's a good point.
I could see an argument for a 3/4 or 4/3, so it's less likely to just be a beast in combat on its own.
What if it was a 4/4 crew 4 or crew 5?
I'm not on board. Sign me out. I think that okay. I think that crew 2, crew 3 is really the sweet spot for things. I think if something's going to have a crew cost higher than that, it has to be like a bananas rare or mythic. It has to do something totally insane when it gets crewed. Anything else that can't be piloted by the pilot tokens, which we should talk about pilot tokens in this set because they are different from Kamigawa pilot tokens.
Yes. Pull that up. Do they have
pick Deathless? No, not. Pick something that makes a pilot. Find a card that makes a pilot.
Here, the lands make a pilot. Yes. Okay.
They don't have the token in the thing, but we can read the text here. We don't need a pilot token card. So pilots in Aetherdrift are different than Kamigawa Neon Dynasty pilots. These pilots are way more skilled. They went to saddle school. They went to the rodeo. Learned how to lasso those mounts. They not just fantastic drivers. So pilot
give a little
tokens
and a little ha.
Yeehaw. They can pilot creature tokens, saddle mounts, and crew vehicles as though their power were 2 greater. So they're 1/1s that can crew 3. And I think that's the sweet spot for the set.
This is a little bit interesting that it says activate only as a sorcery for it. I seem to remember crewing you can do at instant speed, but I guess it's referring specifically to the mounts, which you can only do at sorcery speed.
I think it's referring to the white. I think it's referring to the ability on the land.
Oh, the ability on the land.
Yeah, it's referring to the ability on the land because being able to blow up your land, make a token, crew a something, get somebody seems really powerful, gnarly. Yeah. That's an onboard trick that Wizards just doesn't do onboard tricks like that as much anymore.
Yeah, activate as a sorcery is the fail-safe right there. Okay, so then pilots are better, and having that would be more pushed. I'm coming around to your point on this Dune Drifter. I think you might be right about it being better, but we'll have to play to see. I'm excited to see which one of us is right. Let's talk about the other Orzhov card here. That's the signpost. It's called Embalmed Ascendant. It's a zombie, 1 a white and a black for 3 mana. It's a 1/2 zombie. It has start your engines, which we talked about. And it says when a creature enters, create a 2/2 black creature, zombie creature token. So you're already getting a 2/2 and a 1/2 for the cost of 3 mana, which is very good. And then also at max speed, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So if it was not a max speed ability and instead was just a natural ability that didn't require max speed, it would help you get max speed. But the fact that you already have to be at max speed feels a little bit bad for this ability to be active, because I don't think the body is extremely relevant. I think the 2/2 zombie is probably more relevant as a body. You're getting 3 power and 4 toughness worth of stats out of a 3 mana creature, but it just seems like this body won't really be doing too much. maybe crewing a vehicle or two.
Well, that's the thing that I think makes this card better than it looks on the surface, is that it's making two things that can crew or mount different things.
Right.
So you make two things and you take your vehicle and your mount that you already had on board and you saddle them up, light them up, and turn them sideways. And
that's a good point. Anything that makes additional bodies in the set, I think will probably be better than it looks because, again, you know, crewing stuff and mounting stuff, you need an actual body for each of them. Right?
Yeah. You're not getting max value out of the mount if you don't have something to saddle them. And your vehicles are very unhappy in all but a few extreme cases unless you have the body on board to pilot them.
If you're leaving your vehicle in the garage, it's not doing you any good.
Not at all.
All right. So what do you think? This Embalmed Descendant, is this going to be a bomb?
I'm middle of the road on this card. I like it, but it doesn't excite me the way the vehicle in the set does. But I just like anything that says, get something back out of the graveyard, give me late game value, buy back my bomb that died, things like that. So I'm always very high on the reanimate from graveyard effects. I'm always very high on them, even when they're costly
that I'll say
like that.
Is with reanimate strategies and strategies that play to the late game, I think they are better in sets that are slower because you'll have more time to set up and, you know, get the best thing out of your graveyard and get as much value as you can.
I agree.
If this set ends up being a faster set, which it's based about speed, it's about, you know, it seems like it's full throttle, to use a little terminology there. I think that this set is going to be faster, and I don't know that the late game strategies are going to pan out as much as maybe you would hope they would. Okay, speaking of speed, this next one, you want to take this one because I feel like this is a throwback.
You feel like this is a throwback?
Yes, to a certain type of, I don't know, hovering copter of some kind.
Yeah.
Smuggling variety.
Smuggling copter, taking us all the way back to where vehicles first started. So this is Boosted Sloop. It's a blue and a red. It's an artifact vehicle. It has menace. It says, whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. And it crews 1, and it's a 3/3. So it does have those Smuggler's Copter vibes on it, which Smuggler's Copter is the original busted vehicle from...
That's banned for a time, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that up really quick.
Yeah, you probably need an apostrophe in Smuggler.
Smugglers. And I probably spelled... Oh, no.
There you go. I found it.
Got it. Nice. So it's 2 mana, not 3.
2 mana, not 3. They learned their lesson
also
there.
Flying. Yeah. But whenever it attacks or blocks, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this doesn't care about it attacking. It's any creature attacking.
Yes. So this is different. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. So that's very sweet.
Didn't we say last set in Foundations that Dreadwing Scavenger was busted because when it entered and when it attacked, you drew and discarded a card?
Yes. This definitely has Dreadwing Scavenger vibes to it, and I really like it. Playing this with other things that care about discarding cards is super relevant. So is it blue-red only has this one signpost, whereas a lot of the other colors we've talked about had 2 signposts? But this color pair also has 2 monocolored cards that care about discarding cards. It has, where did it go? It has Marauding Mako and Scrounging Skyray.
So Marauding Mako, if I could spell marauding.
M-A-R.
There it is. Marauding Mako. It's a shark pirate. Love that already. It's 1 red pip. It's a 1/1. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many 1/1 counters on this creature. And it has cycling 2.
And this is a cycling set. So this is already spicy in a cycling set because it's whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature.
Faithless Looting, anybody?
Yeah, seriously.
I think that would be too powerful. What a bunch of junk. I'll take the lot. First of all, I just love the creature type, Shark Pirate. That's fantastic. But also, these two pair so well together because on turn 1, you would play the Mako, and then turn 3, you play the Boosted Sloop, and immediately your 1/1 turns into a 2/2 at minimum, no matter what you did on turn 2, and it just gets bigger from there. So your opponent basically has until turn 4 to deal with this Mako before it becomes something that they will have to devote serious resources to taking care of. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Captain, not Lannery Storm, the one from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, that whenever an artifact entered, it put a 1/1 counter on a creature. Seemed like it could get out of hand very, very quickly. Obviously, this is a little different. You have to discard cards in order to do it. Whatever you discard, you're not always getting those cards back in value. So you are depleting your hand of resources a little bit. However, it still is a very powerful effect.
Gavin, this is the card that you play on turn 1 with YouTube pulled up on your phone playing the Jaws theme. Dun 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 dun. I'm very high on this card. I'm very high on the is it discard archetype. There are also rares in black that care about discarding cards that I've noticed. So I think some kind of Grixis discard cards archetype is going to be sweet.
It seems like the is it type is also specifically pirates. Which I'm always for. Pirates, they're one of my favorite card types in Magic. So give me some more pirates. I'll always take it. This one is the other signpost uncommon from the set, which is called the Broadside Barrage. Also 3 mana. So it looks like once you get to 3 mana in blue-red, some spicy things are going to start to happen. Especially because this is an instant and it deals 5 damage for 3 mana. To target creature or planeswalker relevant. Then you draw a card and discard a card. So this is going to be a very powerful effect for multiple reasons. It's important because it's going to do 5 damage at instant speed, which is extremely relevant. Dealing it to a creature or a planeswalker, again, I don't think there's one planeswalker in the set, right? Chandra?
Okay, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I know there's at least one planeswalker in the set. Yep, Chandra.
Chandra in the Akira slide.
That's right. That's amazing. And then it also fuels what you're trying to do in Izzet, which is a discard. So again, maybe you attack your marauding Mako, on turn 3 into what seems like a bad attack. But then at instant speed, you can boost it up. This seems like a very good combat trick.
It's sweet to have 2 Izzet cards in the set, and this card is amazing.
I mean, honestly, it's been a long time since we've had a very good Izzet deck, and I really hope that this is the set that pushes it over the top.
Is it?
We'll find out. All right, let's talk about the green and black archetype. Let's talk about that for a minute. So this is the Broodheart Engine. It's a black and a green, and it is an artifact, just straight up artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. And then it has 2 a black and a green, tap it, sacrifice this artifact, return target creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So what do you think of this one?
I love Golgari Graveyard Matters as an archetype. This is kind of everything that a Golgari player wants. Something that comes down early, it surveys 1. It's an artifact, which is a relevant card type. Mm-hmm. If you're going to end up playing like blue, black, green and have the Dimir signpost, this is something that's going to count to that.
Yep. Honestly, I really think that this card is better than it looks because surveilling 1 every turn is going to be... It just filters your draws so well, and then eventually you get something back that you surveilled there. I'm not sure how many other mill effects or discard effects. I guess there are discard effects, obviously. So I don't think you should have too much problem putting the thing that you want reanimated back in the bin. I just think that, would you rather be doing something else on turn 2, or is this kind of quote unquote wasted turn, where you're not actually impacting the board? Is that going to be relevant enough? I think this card, if this set is a mid-speed, not very fast format, this could be an MVP card for me.
I think this is going to be where not only are we going to have to see about the speed of the format, but we're going to have to look at what are answers in the format,
Right.
Like,
yeah, if this can just get blown up at instant speed, you don't have that 4 mana open, it's going to be pretty tough.
It's also just you as the Golgari player being able to stay alive when you take turn 2 off to kind of play setup.
Yeah. I really think that Outlaws of Thunder Junction also had a strong Golgari deck. There were a few reanimate effects that were very powerful. And so Badlands Revival being one of them, where it reanimated 2 cards for 5 mana. It reanimated 1 creature and put 1 back in your hand, which is very powerful. This is 4 mana and just puts it back on the battlefield, so maybe slightly better. But also, filtering your draws, I think, can be a little bit of an underrated mechanic. Being able to just put what you want in the graveyard or put it into your hand always feels a lot better than you usually think it does. And then this one, the Thundering Broodwagon.
This
Do you
is
want
a
to take
heck
that
of
one?
a vehicle.
Yeah, it looks terrifying. I mean, look at this goblin right here. He's not having a good time.
And it looks like an insect, like a mechanical insect with the eyes. So
that's right.
Thundering...
There is an insect sub-theme in this set as well.
Is there?
There is. Yep. There's a creature that can make insect creature tokens equal to the number of artifacts in your graveyard.
That's a spicy thing when you're surveilling stuff into your bin.
Exactly. Yeah. No. There's definitely. It reminds me a lot of the Swarm Weaver.
Okay.
From Duskmourn, where it's making these insect creatures. Again, or maybe even like a spider spawning type thing, where you're counting the number of things in your graveyard and getting insects relevant to the board. So I think that's going to be a pretty impactful card as well.
So the Broodwagon that we're looking at here is an artifact vehicle. It's 2 black, green, 6 mana. It is a 6/5. It has Menace and Reach. It crews 3, which gets us back to that discussion of pilots being able to crew things, whether they're relevant or not. This is still in our window of pilots can do that. And it says, when this vehicle enters, destroy target non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 4 or less.
Very relevant. Very good. Very good effect.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good one.
6 mana, nuke something, leave behind something relevant. I like this.
It doesn't kill your opponent's best thing, maybe. I mean, I would say most stuff is 4 mana or less, but it's not going to kill another bomb, which I guess is a downside to this. But reanimating this with your other Golgari signpost, that's got to feel really good. Like, especially if you cycle it and then you reanimate it. The fact that you can just throw it in the bin for a different card and then reanimate it at will seems very good. I like this card a lot. I mean, again, the body is still relevant. It's got Menace if you're aggressive, and it's got Reach if you're defensive. I think it does everything that you'd possibly want in a vehicle of this size for this color pairing.
And don't forget about the Reach, because Reach is going to get you.
Hidden Reach.
Yep.
Hidden Reach. Okay, so let's talk about some Boros stuff, because we have a Cloudspire Coordinator. This is actually one of my favorite uncommons. I think this is going to overperform, and I think it's going to be really impactful. So it is a red and a white Cloudspire Coordinator for a 3/1 human pilot. When this creature enters, scry 2. So already it's even better than the Trained Airings that I was talking about, because you have to saddle that and attack with it in order to get the scry, and this will just get you 2 of those scries right away. Then it also has tap, create X 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens, where X is the number of mounts and or vehicles that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. The tokens have this token saddles mounts and crews vehicles as though were power 2 or greater. So just by playing your creatures or playing your vehicles, you're going to get stuff that automatically crews it for free, basically. And it's also a relevant body.
Gavin, I would note that this is a callback to Kaladesh. Veteran Motorist was a red and a white for a 3/1 that entered and scried 2. And it said whenever it crewed a vehicle, that vehicle gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is that, but better even.
Yeah, the fact that it makes bodies for free. There's no mana sink into it. So you basically play your vehicle, whatever it is, whether it's colorless or part of the cycle. And we're going to talk about another one in a second. It instantly is able to be crewed. by these pilots. And it's also a relevant attacking body. Like a 3-1 is nothing to sneeze at. Your opponent has to respect it, and also if you're blocking with it or you're holding it back, like it definitely can be a defensive body or an offensive body depending on the situation. I think it's a very flexible card, and it can always pump out an additional creature. It says whenever you play, a creature or I think this is probably especially good with saddle creatures, because not only do you get the saddle creature to the board, you also get a pilot in addition, just an additional card out of nothing, So I really like this card a lot. I think it's going to overperform. Let's talk about the tandem to this Cloudspire Sky Cycle. Not a unicycle, unfortunately, but a Sky Cycle. You want to take this one?
Yeah, this is an artifact vehicle. It's 2 red and a white for a 2/3 flying vehicle. And it says, when this vehicle enters, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 other target vehicles and or creatures you control. And most notably, it crews for 1.
That's a beating.
So we talked about the Orzhov zombie that made a 1/2 on its own and made a 2/2 friend to come with it. This is a nice Mardu vehicles pairing there, making a bunch of bodies, putting +1/+1 counters on them, being able to crew a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I love
this reminds me
a
little bit of Felidar Savior, because it comes in and puts 2 1/1 counters on stuff. And you do have to have a board. It'll probably feel better. Obviously it doesn't feel as good if you don't put it on both, on 2 creatures. If you only put it on 1 or even on 0, feels awful. But at the same time, it's a flying body. It's a 2/3 flyer at minimum, and it only crews for 1. So, even if you don't have a good attack on the ground, you could probably get it in the air on the next turn.
Right. And I really dig the Tron vibes going on in the art there.
I love Tron. That's one of my favorite pieces of digital media. It was like one of the first ones, right? So
yeah.
For Team Cloudspire, the track is merely a suggestion. Says it all right there. All right, so we have 2 more cards to talk about. The Rangers Aetherhive is what
Aetherhive? I would say Aetherhive. That's me.
Aetherhive. It looks like Ether.
Yeah. This is
which?
Well, are we saying Aetherdrift or Aetherdrift? I'm saying Aetherdrift.
I will say Aetherdrift as well until somebody corrects me.
There we go. So Rangers Aetherhive is an artifact vehicle. It's 1 a green and a blue. It's an artifact vehicle. It's a 3/5 body. It has vigilance, and it says, whenever you activate an exhaust ability, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, crew 1.
Busted.
I love this card. We already have talked about an exhaust deck. I'm very high on the exhaust deck. I realize the speed of the format is going to determine whether it is completely insane, but it's kind of speaking to me for what I want to do.
Yeah, I think that just getting value like this, like just for playing the game the way you want to play it. I mean, you want to be activating those exhaust abilities, and if you can do it multiple times with the refueler, or even with loot having 3 different abilities on it, it just feels good to do all the things that you're already trying to do and getting rewarded for it.
Right.
Same thing with the red-white pilot. Again, you're already trying to play your creatures and or vehicles and or mounts, and so it rewards you for doing that. And same thing with this Rangers Aetherhive. And again, they're 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens that are artifacts, not insects or something else, because artifact is a relevant card type, as we saw earlier.
And you only need this and the Elvish Refueler to start building an army in a game that's gone long,
That's right.
So
the other thing is it's crew 1 and it has vigilance. So for your 1 power creature that you're crewing this with, you're hitting for 3 and it's probably not going to die because it's got a big 5 toughness butt. All right, let's talk about this last card here, the Sky Serpent Seeker. This is one of my favorite cards from the set. I just love the art on it. I think it's really cool. I didn't even read the rest of the card yet. I just like the art. Snakes with wings, man.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a 2 mana, a green and a blue. creature snake 1/1. It has flying and death touch, and it has an exhaust ability. It says for 4 mana, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal 2 land cards. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and then put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So it's kind of an expensive mana ability, but getting a 2/2 flying death touch creature is relevant, and also the ability to ramp for 4, basically having a 4 mana ramp that will get you to 6 on turn 4 is great. And also you'll survive until then because you have a flying death touch snake.
Yeah, this is going to hold the ground and the air for you. It's going to keep back nasty things that you don't want getting to you. It's also going to pair with that Elvish Refueler that we talked about. If you really need to ramp up high, you can just keep
or you want to get rid of some lands from your deck.
Exactly.
Like, if we're talking about flood insurance.
Indeed. The pairing of those has flood insurance all over it. Sign me up for that.
Yeah. I think that this is a very fine card. I think it's reasonably statted. I think it does everything you want to do. I don't know if adding a +1/+1 counter really does much for it, that it would be better or worse with or without that +1/+1 counter. I think as a death touching creature, I think it's just relevant all game long anyway. So adding that 1/1 counter doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. But the fact that it does have flying, I think there's a lot of flying stuff that you would want to block and not let through. So that's going to make sure that those stay home and don't let that max speed happen. All right, so those are the uncommon signpost uncommons for this set. Is there any other final thoughts you had on these cards or anything that you're particularly looking forward to?
Very excited for this set. This set really speaks to me as a player because there's a lot of, you can do kind of whatever you want to do as your draft or your sealed pool presents to you, you know? Like, am I going to be the dedicated 2-color aggro deck and just play Rakdos-y things, turn things sideways, get to max speed, and burn my opponent to the ground? Or am I playing a long, dirtily exhaust game where I'm building up value? Or am I just dumping a bunch of artifacts onto the table and drawing a bunch of cards and doming my opponent with Haunt the Network? You know, there's so many things that scream draft around me, build around me in this set, that it just has my brain spinning so fast to try and think up cool, interesting things.
Before we go, we had a couple more things we wanted to just touch on. One of which being some comparisons to last set as far as removal is concerned. Did you want to touch on this this option here, this Grim Bauble?
Yeah. So what I want to get back to is something that we talked about early on, is when you're trying to navigate a new format, it really helps to look at comparisons to formats you're familiar with. We just came off of Foundations that I really loved, and 2 cards that I really loved in Foundations were Stab and Bushwhack. Stab is a 1 black instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And Bushwhack was 1 green sorcery. Choose 1. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle. Or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. We've got variations on a theme here in Aetherdrift. We have, in black, we have Grim Bauble, which is 1 black. It's an artifact. When this artifact enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. It also has 2 and a black, sack this artifact, surveil 2. So there's a lot of things that are flavorful to the format going on here. There's surveil.
It's an artifact that stays on the battlefield for things that count those, like the signpost uncommon that we were talking about in Dimir. But the fact that it's sorcery speed, do you think it'll hurt it a little bit more?
I think you're going to have less opportunities to just get them. You know, Stab was something that you fired off early to take out problematic things early, but you could also hold it late to get people in combat and do things.
You're not going to do that with this one.
You're not doing that with this. It's sorcery speed because it's an artifact. It doesn't have flash or anything, but it's still something you're going to run out early to take out that early problematic thing.
You're going to get rid of a problematic thing that's starting their engines and making it so that they can get to max speed quickly.
Exactly.
All right, so Plow Through is kind of the equivalent of Bushwhack in that it can either have a creature you control fight a target creature an opponent controls, or destroy target vehicle. Now, this one doesn't search up a land, but it does have a fight effect, or just straight up destroy a vehicle. So this 1 mana sorcery speed spell can destroy the crazy, vehicle artifact that we saw that destroys a target non-land permanent mana value 4 or less, or the blue-white artifact. I mean, 1 mana for any removal. I think that's going to be an MVP, especially in this set where there are so many relevant artifacts. I think the second mode will be chosen a lot more than the first.
I agree. I think 1 mana destroy target vehicle is going to be fantastic. And if you have to play it for its first mode of fighting something, that's still fine. Bushwhack in Foundations for me was I'm playing a multicolor monstrosity and Bushwhack is tying the room together. And then I fought something when it just wasn't doing anything to cash in. Whereas Plowthrough is always playing a get something dead, but the get something dead half of it, the destroy a vehicle, is way better than the fight spell in this format.
Absolutely. And the other thing is there are a lot of vehicles, so fighting isn't even necessarily that good because they can either crew in response, so they still have a blocker up.
Right.
If their creature is just going to die outright, or the vehicle isn't available for you to fight, because it's on their turn. There's a few things that we wanted to talk about, some commons that we just wanted to touch on that we think could be extremely good in this set. My pick for this was the Gastel Blockbuster. When it enters, you may sacrifice a creature or vehicle. When you do, destroy target artifact and opponent controls. So this is really great with that Grim Bauble, because you play the Grim Bauble and destroy their first thing, and then they play another artifact, and you destroy that too, and you basically pay 4 mana to destroy 2 things.
Well, this cares about sacking a creature or vehicle, so it's not going to let you sack the bauble to it.
I see. Okay.
So
maybe you can't. Yeah.
But what is relevant here is that this is a 3 mana 3/2 body that also sacks a something to nuke a problematic thing.
That's right. Yeah, and it kills all artifacts, right? So it doesn't matter what the artifact is, it's a creature, or vehicle, whatever. But yeah, I guess having to sack a creature or vehicle makes it a little less palatable, because if you're giving up, I don't know how many small value creatures or vehicles
pilot tokens
want to be sacrificed. I guess you could sacrifice a pilot token that the Kamikaze pilot. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess the one that poops out pilot tokens would be pretty relevant with this one as well.
Yeah. This is going to play nicely with that.
Your combat trick?
So I'm very high on Run Over. This is 1 and a green for an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a mount or vehicle you control. And it says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. I'm going to have mounts and vehicles in my set, in my deck. I'm going to have lots of them. This is the vehicle mounts set. So being able to play it as a 1 mana, not fight spell, bite spell.
Yeah, bite spell. Yeah.
And nuke their thing is going to be fantastic.
The fact that it's
very
instant
high on this
and
card.
it only needs to cost one mana is, a lot of the time, is going to be fantastic. I'm very high on this card too. I think it's fantastic. One that we're not sure, but we think can do very well is the Guidelight Matrix. It's 2 mana, colorless, artifact. When it enters, you draw a card, and then it has 2 and a tap. Target mount you control becomes saddled until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery, and 2 and tap. Target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So this kind of replaces the saddle and or crew effect that you're looking for, but it's an artifact instead of a creature. How do you feel about this, Paul?
I would say bookmark this card and have it on your radar. This card is either fantastic or it's unplayable. I don't think there's a middle ground for it. I'm very excited to try this card because A, it replaces itself. It draws a card. It's 2 mana. It's going to come down early. It's going to be an artifact on the board for artifact matters things. But I also my mind is wheeling with the idea of having all of my mounts and vehicles now say, pay 2 mana, tap this thing I don't care about, crew my vehicle, or saddle my mount. Like being able to do that for mana as opposed to having a creature to do that really intrigues me. I'm very fascinated by this card. I think this is, as far as design goes, I think this is the most interesting card in the set in terms of design, not necessarily in terms of power, just in terms of design.
Gotcha. I mean, my thought on it is that paying 2 mana to do something that doesn't impact the board on turn 2 is going to kill you a lot of the time. And, you know, if you already have, I mean, I don't know how many 1 mana mounts or vehicles are in the set. I don't think there are any that I've seen. So the minimum you're able to crew this is going to be turn 4, turn 5, because if you're playing the artifact or vehicle that you want to crew, you're probably going to, you know, have to take a turn off from using this in order to play your vehicle. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit on the bust side, personally. Just the play pattern doesn't really sit well with me, but I would be happy to be wrong. And let us know in the comments what you think about the Guidelight Matrix. If you think this is going to be an impactful card, or if you think it's going to be a last pick.
Really quickly, Gavin, there are 2 1 mana mounts in the set that I found at a quick glance. One of them is common, that's Brightfield Glider, which is 1 white for a 1/1 vigilance. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it gets +1/+2 and gains flying until end of turn. It saddles for 3. So that's, you need pilots.
So on turn 3 you would get it?
Yeah, turn 3 you would get it.
Okay, and then what was the other one?
The other one is a rare that's District Mascot. It's 1 green for a 0/0. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can pay 1 and a green, remove 2 +1/+1 counters from this creature, destroy target artifact. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it saddles 1. That's one of the rares you really want to have in your pool in this format. Being able to
that's a good one.
Pay 1 and a green, remove 2 counters, and kill an artifact is going to be super relevant. So there's not nothing, but I agree that there's not.
I guess that's the Cathar Commando of the format is a little doggy.
Yeah, that's the closest we're getting. Yeah,
I think that, you know, again, still, even if you play that on turn 2, on turn 3, you know, you're not really getting that much of a disc. I guess the best case scenario would be on turn 3, you're saddling, you know, your flying squirrel. You're not really developing out to the board on turn 3. So again, I think it could be boom or bust. I mean, again, if this is a slower format and things go late, it definitely would benefit you to have a card that is not, you know, on the board already and it's just on the side. And less impactful to removal, and you can still crew your vehicles and mount your mounts, saddle your mounts. Last thing we want to talk about before we go is just this set of beautiful lands. I mean, talk about Rainbow Road and all these other, you know, amazing places. Country Roads, Take Me Home.
Yeah.
West Virginia. Then we've got Reef Roads, Foul Roads, Rocky Roads. Rocky Roads. Oh, makes me hungry for ice cream.
You're having a pit stop there for sure.
So these are the lands, the uncommon lands for this set. Similar to Bloomburrow, they come in 1 color type. So they all can sacrifice for 1 and the color they tap for to sacrifice it and create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token. We already talked about that a little bit. Do you think this effect is going to be better than advertised or worse than advertised?
I'm way more tantalized by the sheer number of 2-color lands in this format. Having the full cycle of 10 gain lands in here.
Tranquil Cove, Dismal Backwater, Blood-Filled Caves, Rugged Highlands, Blossoming Sands. These are all at common, mind you. And then we have these...
The rare ones that we saw previously in, was it Duskmourn that they were in?
I believe it was in Duskmourn, yep. Yeah. The ones that add a color if there's a certain type on the battlefield, either a swamp or a plains or, you know, other than that. I mean, so it will tap for both colors if you have one or the other. So very flexible lands.
This is speaking to me, Gavin, that this is going to be a multicolor set. I feel like it's quietly a multicolor set. You know, we're not seeing Azorius guilds. We're not seeing Mardu wedges or shards. You know, there's no Esper anything.
We're not on Tarkir, you know?
Yeah, we're not on Tarkir. We're not on Alara. But I feel like the sheer amount of fixing available is speaking to me that I'm going to want to do Yeah, it's speaking to me that I'm going to want to do 3-color decks.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. So we'll have to
It'll
see
be
how...
very easy to splash.
Exactly. So we'll have to see how aggressive the format plays out, whether just playing the greed pile is the thing you want to do, or whether you want to be really disciplined and focused.
With this amount of fixing, I mean, literally 10 different lands that can be used for multiple colors. I do think that a 5-color deck would be possible. I don't know how many 5-color payoffs there are in the set. I don't think there's that many. But I do think that if you want to splash for certain colors, or if you get a bomb in a certain color, you should feel pretty free to try and, make that work. There's also these 3 other lands.
Did I misspeak? Do we not have the full 10 gain lands?
Nope, we have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6, 7,
7. Yeah.
8, 9.
8, 9. No, we do have all 10.
Okay, we have all 10. So
10.
we have 15.
Yeah, 15. Excuse me. 15 duels.
That's spicy to me.
That's very good. I really like, and again, with OTJ, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, they were deserts, and they dealt damage when they entered, as opposed to gain. Same effect, they entered tapped, but I think it's going to be something similar here, where you can splash a 3rd or even a 4th color. Like in my championship deck for the for Mythic rank, I was able to very easily, even with just a small bit of fixing, that Bruce Tarl, because it was so powerful. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about are just these 3 raceways: the Amonkhet Raceway, Ashkar Raceway, and Muruganda Raceway. They all have start your engines, so you can start your engines on turn 1, even if you don't have a creature.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be impactful?
I think this is going to be impactful. I am only going to play these in a dedicated start your engines 2-color aggressive deck, because if I'm doing 5-color nonsense bombs, I don't want to put a colorless land in my deck. But I'm really drawn to the common Avishkar Raceway of max speed, discarding, and drawing.
My favorite one of these 3 actually is the Muruganda Raceway, especially if you can get max speed on turn 4, because that ramps you from 4 to 6. Basically, if you can get your max speed, if you can basically go Muruganda Raceway, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop on turn 4, you're going to have 6 mana. And you're able to hit your opponent each turn from that point. Not undoable. Certainly maybe a little bit harder than I'm making it out to be, but giving an additional 2 mana for just, again, playing a game in an aggressive way, benefiting you with a mana payoff, I think is going to be a little bit impactful from that perspective. Yes. There's a common, uncommon, and yeah, right. This one is all, the Amonkhet Raceway is also impactful, just because giving haste can be very important for max speed, probably. If you're able to attack with 1 additional creature, or a creature that has higher stats than the other and has haste. I like that they also put them in stages. Like the common is stage 1, the Winding Streets of Garapar; stage 2, the Sands and Waters of Amonkhet; and stage 3, Steaming Jungles of Muruganda under falling skies. So it's very flavorful. I mean, if we look at the night market, the Indigo Revolution changed more about Ashkar than just its name. Even Gonti's infamous night markets had gone legitimate. I mean, this flavor is just picture perfect.
Yeah. This is a win. If they wanted to do Death Race 2000, the Magic set, this is really it. I'm very excited. Mad Max. Yeah, there's definitely that vibe going on.
Honestly, I'm getting a lot of Mario Kart vibes.
Oh, 100%. There's a blue shell. We didn't talk about blue shell, but there's a blue shell.
I'll pull it up. What is it? What is it called? It's called, let's see here. Set it.
Spike Shell Harrier.
Spike Shell Harrier, huh?
Spike Shell is one word.
There it is. Ah, yes, the old Spike Shell Harrier.
Yeah, so there is a blue shell. As 4 and a blue for an artifact creature robot turtle. It's a 4/4. When this creature enters, return target creature or vehicle opponent controls to its owner's hand. If that opponent's speed is greater than each other player's speed reduce that opponent's speed by 1. This effect can't reduce their speed below 1. So this is the only way to reduce speed.
Resolution, imminent, impact.
Yeah. You're spinning, you lost some coins.
Yeah, there's a banana peel just for good measure.
Yeah.
Honestly, I that is the only card I think that reduces speed, and it's so flavorful and perfect. I just think that this set is going to have so much to offer for everybody. It's going to be a very fun set. It seems campy in like the best way. All of the art is extremely good. It's not taking itself too seriously. And the last thing I want to mention is they're doing a new thing with the box toppers and the other event kind of prizing, is they're printing these special cards, these first place cards for folks who either win draft, sealed, or buy box sets that have box toppers that are only in this gold foiling. I don't even know it's foiling. It's just a gold treatment. So you can say, I placed first and I get this gold medal,
Yeah.
That makes me feel really good. And obviously you're always playing for the gold, but when it's early on in the set, sometimes you don't know what the rock is yet, and you get rocked yourself. So having those gold foil treatments and having that type of playfulness that Wizards came out with just really makes me smile, makes me happy, and makes me want to play for first. It makes me want to go on a pedestal at my local game store and stand on a pedestal and hold my card up.
Fireworks above your head. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I get the whole Mario Kart treatment.
For sure.
Anyway, that's all we had for this episode today. Paul, do you have anything else?
I think it's time we park the vehicle and get a pit stop in.
Throw it in reverse?
Yeah.
No, I think it's time for us to wrap up here. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms. Instagram at Pick1Pack1Pod. We've got Blue Sky, Pick1Pack1Pod. We also are on Spotify and on YouTube, Pick1Pack1. Tell us your favorite cards from this new set. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're right. Tell us anything that you did in Foundations that you really enjoyed. Got some really good feedback from some folks saying that they really enjoyed some of the tips on our drafting for Foundations. So hopefully you can carry that into Aetherdrift, and hopefully everybody enjoys this content. We're going to keep going. We're going to send it into overdrive, go to hyperspeed.
We're in max speed. We're going full ahead.
Throttle. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to pass to the end step, pass the turn. See you next week.
Cheers.